So you've started stained glass and you know the safety steps to take during the process of making stained glass. But how about afterwards? So in this video, I'll go over the best practices for safety cleanup after a stained glass project. Now, these are going to be my steps and what has been working for me, but feel free to share your best practices so we can all work better and safer in our stained glass work. So after you've been cutting for a while, you're bound to have these glass bits and pieces kind of all over your workspace and even some on the ground as well. Depending on if you've been using the Grosing pliers or not, I would say the Grosing pliers contribute to most of the glass mess in your work area. You're crunching and breaking glass and things are maybe exploding all over. That will get messy with the Grosing pliers. If you're using just the regular glass cutter and doing regular cutting, you're not really gonna have that much glass flying all over. There's just gonna be minimal glass bits, things that are coming off the glass. What I've been doing is simply just to sweep everything into a dustpan, and you can trash that, or just use a towel and lightly sweep everything up off the table, off the workboard into a dustpan. For the floors, I clean up as well with a regular broom and dustpan. If I really want it to be clean, then I would bring out the shop vac and vacuum the countertop, the table, all the workspace that you've been working on, even the workboard and also the floors, to pick up those remaining glass particles. So that's pretty much how I would get rid of the glass bits and the shards that will get all over the shop. So for the oil, we don't use a lot of it, just a tiny drop on the cutting blade, and so there's not much to clean up. If there's excess oil, then you might wipe that off with a paper towel or a rag, and once those gets used up, then you can trash them. And although the oil is usually non-toxic and water soluble, I still wouldn't wash it in the laundry and mix that up with your clothes. And maybe wash it in the sink if you feel the need to do that, but use something like a shop rag to clean up the oil and keep using that. The next thing we should talk about are the glass scraps, glass that you break. What do you do with those glass scraps? A few ideas come to mind. One would be mosaics. You can find different pieces that match and become a pattern in itself, maybe turn it into a flower pattern. And you can use some type of a clear weld bond adhesive. It's clear when it dries. You actually just glue your glass pieces together and hold that to its shape. I haven't tried that out yet, but it is a great alternative to turn your pieces into mosaics. Another good idea is to use it for fused projects, and that is actually melting the glass together. We do our welding and bonding using soldering and lead came and have everything come together in that way. For fusing glass, you actually take the glass pieces and they melt together in a hot oven. I haven't gone down that road, but using it for fused projects in the future would be great ideas for glass scraps. Of course, you can take these scraps and pieces and turn them into some abstract project using our copper foiling method. Of course, that depends on the leftover pieces and what you've got, but you can definitely turn that into a new project in itself. Another thing you can do with these glass pieces, once they get pretty small, maybe even too small to turn into some of these projects that I mentioned, you can actually turn them into frit, and that's actually ground glass. So you can actually take these pieces and grind them down using a grinder of some sort, or this frit piston that crushes the glass and actually turns them down into ground glass, and you can use that in different fused projects to kind of add texture or patterns and colors into the fused projects. So you can turn those bigger scraps into smaller scrap pieces, which can be turned into frit. Also, you can take your cut pieces, the things that you won't use anymore, you can sell those by the pound. There are other people out there that would love to take the smaller pieces off your hands, turn them into the mosaic projects, or even turn it and grind it down into frit. Of course, a nicer way to get rid of the scraps is to just simply give them to a friend that would be able to use it for their projects, so you can definitely hand those off. But whatever you do, just don't throw away the scraps. There are definitely uses for them, and other people will be able to benefit from the scraps, so just hang on to them. If you don't know what to do with it right now, you will be able to have a pretty sizable collection as you get going, and that can be turned into something else. Doesn't need to go into the trash if you can't come up with a project. Okay, so now let's talk about the grinder and the cleanup. So you've added some water into the grinding bay, you've got some coolant in it, and you might have been grinding, doing a grinding session for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes. So of course, the longer you grind and the more glass you put into it, there's gonna be all these tiny shards and bits of glass that gets collected into that grinding bay. I used to clean up after every session, but that's really unnecessary. So after I finish grinding for a project, I leave that grinder as is with the water and let that dry, leave all the glass bits, everything, all the ground glass, leave that inside the collection bay. Once the water dries up, you'll have these dried up ground glass bits that you can take a paper towel, wipe in, collect it, and then you can throw that into the trash. Or some people might choose to dump that into their garden or into the dirt. You can rinse your grinder over that dirt patch to collect tiny bits, and you can do the same with a sponge and just rinse and wash that off in that designated area. What you don't want to do is dump all the water and the glass bits down your drain. That could clog your pipes and cause problems later on with that collection of the fine ground glass. If you are using coolant for your grinder, they should be water soluble and safe to wash down your drain. But again, you could wait for it all to dry and wipe off to clean the grinder. For the foil, not sure if there are best ways to trash copper strips. Most of the foil gets used up anyways, and that backing adhesive cover just gets thrown in the trash. Let me know if you are doing something different from this. Now for solder, you might have questions on what to do with leftover flux or the leftover solder. With the leftover solder, I collect them all in a small baggie, and I will be saving those until there's a sizable collection that I can drop off to a recycling plant or a facility where they do take lead and this leaded solder. But so far it's just a small baggie, and so I don't have too much of that waste collected yet. Same goes for those tiny bits and drops of solder. Basically gets everywhere as you're soldering. So for those, I sweep off my workboard and try to collect as much as I can. Again, goes into the same baggie and will be used for that drop off later on. For the flux, I usually transfer about 1/2 ounce to 1 ounce of liquid into a small jar. I use that throughout the project, and when I'm done, I take a paper towel, wipe that jar off, and throw that paper in the trash. And you can reuse that a few more times if there's a lot of liquid in that jar. If it looks clean, then I would use it again. But if it looks dirty and there's a lot of solder deposits and other junk in there, then it's probably time for a new fill. For chemical cleanup, such as cleaners, sprays, and patinas, we all know patina is pretty toxic. I like to use paper towel to clean when possible, and that goes in the trash. Even though some of these cleaners are non-toxic, like CJ's and Quick Clean, we are washing off this lead and getting that contaminated, so the rag shouldn't be mixed in with your regular clothes or in your laundry. I keep a regular shop rag around for general cleanup. That becomes the dedicated rag for all things that I do here, and when that gets used up, then that goes in the trash. I don't wash it, so there's no spread of lead contaminants or chemicals going elsewhere. Now, did I miss something? Please let me know and share with others down in the comments. If you want some more tips, check out these videos right here. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.